Well, it's interesting. We had a former White House counsel, Jack Quinn, who was on earlier, who said, given all of these threads, all of these, incidents, accounts, it would be absurd for the FBI not to launch investigations based on these things. Shan, would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I have to disagree with Tom there. I mean, just as we don't know those answers, I don't think we can speculate that the motivation might be political. I think it's important to remember that the Mueller probe really has its origins in a counterintelligence investigation, not necessarily into the president. Maybe they did at the time, we didn't know about it, but looking at Russian interference. And from that arises these various criminal investigations. I mean, I think it would be completely malpractice on the part of the federal employees at the FBI and at the Justice Department, given what we know now in hindsight. If they had even an inkling of that, they had to open a counterintelligence investigation. And if there's concern that the President of the United States was being compromised, they certainly have to look at that. And I think in the absence of anything to the contrary, we have to assume that normal channels were followed. Although I have to say, I'm very sympathetic to the FBI leadership. When the director has just been unceremoniously fired by Twitter, they could certainly have been in a very alarmed state trying to figure out, what do we do here? And I think this is a great example of how the institutions are so important, that even in a crisis like that, very unprecedented, the career employees try and follow the process. And I think we can assume that they did, and I think it kind of dovetails into the fact that federal employees are being so disrespected at the moment by this president. Those people are the bedrock of how our institutions work, and we depend upon them for our democracies.
Yeah, and Tom, this was based on mostly very public behavior by the president. This wasn't, or I guess what's cited in the New York Times, these were not things that were just kind of clandestine operations or, alleged clandestine operations, but this was out in the public, nearly self-inflicted, that the president's behavior or actions would precipitate, from the NBC interview saying, I fired him because of the Russia thing, to being on the campaign trail and saying, Russia, if you're listening, hack these emails. Shouldn't those things be really alarming?
Fred, I'll go to that email question first. When Trump said that during the debates, Hillary Clinton's server had been closed since she was Secretary of State. There was no request for the Russians to hack into a system which no longer existed. It was a request that Russia, if you have her 30,000 emails, turn them over. Now, you'll recall that Comey, during congressional testimony, had said that that private server system that Hillary Clinton had was less secure than Google or some of the public Gmail systems out there. And the FBI and all of the senior executives at the time were assuming that China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea had access to her server and had the information. So for Trump,
but there are a lot of coincidences for Trump and people in his orbit to mention Russia or have alleged activity with Russia. Isn't that what raised the flag for the FBI, your former colleagues?
I don't know, to be honest, but it's been all this time, and where is the result of that? But again, often Trump will say something, gets himself in trouble. He's his own worst enemy when it comes to this. And during that debate where he said that about Russia, produced those emails, he made a comment in one sentence that he should have taken about 4 or 5 to explain that it's clear that foreign intelligence services had easy access to hack into her system, and assuming they did, and assuming they still have those emails, now bring them, produce them, make them available. So I think that part of this is just him, that now, it's been implied that he was asking Russia to hack into a system. Well, that system was closed for several years at the time he made that comment.
Shan, last word?
But the fact remains that those systems were hacked into, in terms of not only that system, the DNC system. So obviously there's heavy predicate for this investigation to be opened. I mean, I think, Tom, the president would have been well served had you written his talking points for him, but that's not what he said. And I think based, again, on a very public record.
I agree. It was his mistake.
Yeah, and I agree, he is his worst enemy. I mean, really, based on the kinds of things he was saying and the timing of what happened, I mean, I just don't see that the leadership at Justice or the FBI had any choice but to look into this.
Follow up. Shan Wu, Tom Fuentes, good to see you both. Thank you.